Welcome to Upcancel Ledgebounce, presented by Downb. This is Josh, going solo today without Wisely to bring you all a very interesting and timely conversation. Taking place in a couple weeks, Genesis 3 is easily slated to be one of the largest Smash tournaments for both Melee and Smash for Wii U. The San Jose-based event hasn't been without its controversies, though. A joint Reddit and Facebook post by California-based Smash 4 player Fallen dropped late last Monday, December 28th, and ignited concern within the Smash 4 community when it revealed that the top 32 seeds of the singles event would automatically be advanced to the second wave of pools, bypassing a full day's worth of competition. With me now to talk about the controversy and its aftermath, I'm joined digitally by two guests. The first is Melee at On Me's own Dr. Z, the Director of Tournament Operations for Genesis, and very much the face of the Genesis staff in the first few hours following Fallen's post. Dr. Z, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
My other guest today is Pulse Gaming's Vayseth out of Michigan. Vayseth was one of the head TOs for Smash 4 at Big House 5 and was one of the earlier respondents to Fallen's Facebook post, citing his concerns after he contacted the sizable Japanese player base coming in from Genesis. Vayseth, I appreciate you being here as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Dr. Z, I want to kind of start with you. Start us off maybe by taking us back to when the decision to auto-advance top seeds came about in discussions with the other Genesis staff.
Sure. So this is, for Melee, we had talked about it for a while because we have so many things going on day one, and it's just become really hard to schedule everybody, especially the top players who are doing this this draft cruise battle thing, which can last up to 8 hours. And so a lot of our top players are also entering multiple events beyond Melee. So we were trying to come up with a way to kind of fix our scheduling. And since the Melee at On Top 100 was coming out soon, this gave us an idea that we could have them all skip round one of pools, and this would free up a lot of time and also give the players who were doing really well over the past year some recognition and have them skip directly to round two. So as our scheduling process went on, we were coming upon a similar problem for scheduling all the Wii U events, including the Wii U crew battles and also the possible Brawl Tournament of Legends, which might happen depending on the compendium level reached. And so we were like, okay, we did this for Melee. I wonder if we can do this for Wii U. So I've got a team of 3 people that help me make all the Wii U decisions, which are DC from NorCal, Bear, and Crow. And so I asked them, do you think this would be a good idea? And, we were thinking about it for a little bit. We weren't really sure whether this would work or not. So we went to this Facebook group called Global Smash 4 Discussion or something like that, which has about 100 people in it. And it's primarily top community leaders, TOs, and players in that group. And so we went over there basically purely on a fact-finding mission. And we're like, okay, this is what we did for Melee. We're thinking about doing this for Wii U. Is this a good idea or not? And so we posted that something like 3 weeks ago. And the response was unanimously positive. Not like overwhelmingly positive, like everybody thought this was the best idea ever, but everybody that responded at least was like, oh yeah, I think we can make this work. So that happened, started about 3 weeks ago, and over the next couple weeks, people were discussing it and trying to figure out kind of what the top 32 might be. We're doing 32 because Melee was 64 and Wii U's got about half the entry, so we thought 32 might be a good number. So a discussion went for about 2 weeks with the seating, and the one thing that I regret about doing this is that we didn't announce this decision earlier, and the reason we didn't do that is we wanted to wait until the seating was finished because we wanted to avoid a lot of people speculating and especially people petitioning everybody on the Genesis 3 team, everybody in the Wii U community about who deserves what seed. That's what we were trying to avoid, and in retrospect, it was clearly a mistake not to put this announcement out earlier. And so in any case, as you know, on Monday, that thread popped up from Fallen, and everything just kind of went from there. So that's the story of how this came to be in the first place.
Yeah, and Fallen's post, just for sake of throwing out some numbers, the enormity of the community backlash was really remarkable. About 300 comments on Reddit and over 200 comments on Facebook within 18 hours of it being posted. Twitter blew up, and I'm sure your notifications blew up. I'm sure Bears and DC's notifications blew up. What was the initial reaction within the team to Fallen posting this out?
Well, we knew that the Wii U community is new and not a lot of things are settled yet. And so a lot of people have opinions about things, and people are liable to make a lot of posts, really expressing their discontent about this or that rule or policy within the Wii U community. Not to at all cast aspersions on them. I mean, Melee was the same back in the day, but that's just the way it is. So we initially were just like, okay, people complain about things all the time. Is this something we have to worry about? And initially, it didn't appear to be so. I unfortunately was stuck at an airport. My flight was delayed for 6 hours, so I was watching this all develop on my phone, basically. So initial reaction was, this is just something that's going to happen. We'll just see how it goes. And the policy at the time was we don't see any reason to change it, and so we're not going to change it. And that was basically what all of our initial statements were about that.
And so I think this is probably a good point to patch in Vayseth. You became aware of this plan to float the top 32 seeded players only after Fallen's post, right?
That is correct.
Okay, tell us what it was like to find out about that.
Before I do that, I was just wondering if I could talk about who I am, because I don't think anybody actually knows who I am. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with Dr. Z, so why am I in this interview with him?
Absolutely, yeah, feel free.
Yeah, so I did co-head TO the Big House 5, which is probably the biggest tournament I did. So I am primarily on the Wii U side because while I started hosting tournaments in 2003 for Melee, I really delved into the Michigan Brawl community in 2008-09 before I was shipped off to Japan, where I stayed for almost 6 years. And then I went to QB's, which some people might know him as 9B, but it's QB, the Japanese word for 9. So if you want to talk to him or call his name, you should call him QB like a quarterback, not 9B. He won't know what you're saying. But and then I came back to the U.S. for various reasons, family, career, etc., just before the release of Smash 4, and that's been my focus since. So I'm primarily a Smash 4 guy, and I believe, Dr. Z, you're primarily a Melee guy. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so there might be some conflict, but we're both TOs. We've both done majors. So that's one of the main things I want to talk about is unity, and that's why when Josh originally asked me to be on the cast, I wanted to make sure that you or somebody from the Genesis 3 staff could be here. So I found out about it. I think I just have the Genesis 3 Facebook notifications on medium or whatever the lowest level is.
Sure.
So I don't get everything, but when something major happens, it says, hey, there's been a post in Genesis 3. And I read it, and to say I was disappointed would possibly be an understatement. A million things ran through my mind because I have that deep relationship with the Japanese community. I immediately thought, oh my God, what's going to happen with them? Like, would they be upset? Like, had they known, would they have even decided to come out? Like, what are the ramifications on them? So that was the first thing I thought. And I mean, one of the main reasons I'm going as well is to reconnect with them before I go back to Japan in March. So that was a huge catalyst for me. And I believe a lot of people going is the Smash 4 Japanese players coming. So at first I was very defensive, but I also have a lot of experience with buys in a tournament setting, and it's a personal pet peeve of mine. I really, really don't like them, and I can talk about the other games that I've played that have buys and why I feel that way as we move down the line.
Sure. So, Vayseth, why don't you talk to me a little bit? We spoke a little bit before this interview, but why don't you talk to me a little bit about what the initial Japanese response was that you saw, that you were able to communicate with?
Well, I was immediately relieved when the Japanese players didn't seem to mind at all. they seem to have no preference one way or the other, and they actually just kind of feel like either way it doesn't matter. I had two major things. Abadango is the only player I can text, so I immediately texted him asking his opinion, and we had a short to medium conversation about it. And the first thing he said was, "I'm gonna win anyway, so it doesn't matter if I have to play on day 2 or day 1." So, I mean, I feel a lot of top players feel that way as well. They're almost certainly going to win anyway, so if it saves time or it gives the tournament organizers an ability to do a side event, what's the harm, basically? I did a lot of tweeting to the Japanese community, and at the end of the day, I didn't get a whole lot of opinions, but it is telling that my number one retweeted post on Twitter by Japanese people was the one in Japanese where I said, last time I saw a leaked version of the top 32, all the top Japanese players were in there. So I guess it's fair to assume that as long as there's Japanese players in there and that they did the seeding, that they wouldn't care either way. But Abadango himself personally said, it doesn't matter if I'm in. He thinks that he should be in, but if he's not, it doesn't matter either way. So I was immediately relieved to hear that they weren't upset, or actually they didn't care either way about it.
Let me just jump in there real quick. So, obviously a top player, they are going to be, I think, have a favorable opinion of this rule because it's less work for them. And also, I mean, that's kind of like a typical Japanese response to that. Is just they're just going to not throw too much shade on the people that are running the event, and they're just going to come and do whatever they need to do to win. But so I do recognize that there is a kind of hazard in asking the top players who are likely to benefit from this rule only about what they think about this rule, because you're going to get kind of a not representative sample of people if you just do that. So when I asked this group, as I said in my post on the Facebook group, at least 60 people saw this post that I made, either commented or had the opportunity to see it and did see it and didn't say anything. And even if you take out 32 people from that, that still leaves 28 people who saw it and either commented positively, continued this discussion without saying anything, any questioning it or saying anything negative about it. So to me, it's really unlikely that somehow I just got every single person in the Wii U community, in top players, top TOs, top community leaders, and I just happened to get all of them that were positive about this idea just by pure luck from asking in this group.
I do want to push you a little bit to talk a bit. Yesterday on Melee and Omni's channel, Tafo was speaking with Isam, and Isam was going over the situation, and he had stated the post made on the Global Smash group, he sort of made a quick list of everyone that had responded. A number of the people that he listed were later people who were detractors, who vehemently pushed against this policy. How did that read to you? Is that sort of something that speaks to maybe a faulty method of communicating with these folks, or?
Yeah, so, I'm not going to name names right now. I think he might have mentioned a couple in the podcast, which I didn't see in its entirety. So anybody that wants details can read that. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, as a person who does not actively follow the Wii U community, although I do read many of the posts in the NorCal Smash 4 discussion group, this was purely, I want to do the responsible thing and ask people who are respected in the community what the right thing to do is. And then when they tell me the right thing to do, and then there's this big backlash against it once more people find out, and then after the fact, they don't want to own up to their responsibility in the whole thing. Well, I mean, people do that all the time. That's whatever. That's just something you have to deal with as not only a tournament organizer but a human being. And thankfully, I don't know any of those people too well, so I don't have to continue to interact with them much. But to me, it says something about the state of leadership in the Wii U community, and it's really disappointing because it's a community that really deserves to have strong leadership, people who will interact with the rest of the community and do their best to advance the metagame and also just the state of the game in general and its stature in all of esports. And so it to me it's more disappointing on that end, really more than anything else. So I just don't feel like they're being served well. Yeah, I don't want to say overall they're not being served well, but definitely there are a lot of people that are not putting the work in, are not listening to their people about what their community wants.
And I think we can look also, interestingly enough, DC, your co-Genesis staff member, a few hours before Fallen's post on Reddit and Facebook, tweeted in the middle of a 2-stock, 3-stock, another rules debate, made a twit longer in which he laid out the idea that Smash 4 has not yet had any majors run by Smash 4 TOs exclusively. That there have been just constant tournaments that are melee tournaments with Smash 4 that feature prominently, of course, but folks in similar positions to yourself where you have to make decisions for a community you don't necessarily belong to. And so I agree with your point there about leadership. And I think it's interesting that DC had tweeted about, albeit a very different issue, had tweeted something very similar moments before Fallen's post went live.
Yeah, and I don't expect this is a new game that has just come out a year ago. I don't expect there to be the prime TO, the community leader, the number one discussion group right out of the gate. People are going to work with the infrastructure that's already in place, and Melee just has more people because we've been around the longest, so we've just got people with the most experience. But and that's fine, and it's fine to rely on the infrastructure that's already in place for a while. But eventually, we would really like to see people step up and take their own kind of take ownership of the direction of their community. Definitely.
Certainly one
So,
of the... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Vayseth, I apologize.
oh yeah, no, I wanted to talk about that as someone focused in the Smash 4 community. I definitely wanted to say on that. First of all, me nor anyone I know, I believe, is not in that discussion. So, as the TO team that ran one of the most successful Wii U tournaments, and actually, Josh, correct me if I'm wrong because you were there and on staff, but the Big House 5 seemed to be one of the first Wii U majors that sort of actually got respect from the Melee players, the Melee side. Like, I remember going to Apex 2015 and there was a lot of booing and whenever Smash 4 would go on and whatnot. But it's the first time the community seemed really unified.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, so we're making strides and the game is... A lot of people thought that it was going to be a flash in the pan, but many of the things that have gone on have proven that the game can last. And I think it's too early to really, like, Melee has such a storied history that everybody who's stepping up on the Wii U side, we really don't have a lot. Like, I was part of that tournament and I'm not part of the overall discussion, which is kind of unfortunate, but it just illustrates that a lot of us don't know each other. Like, I couldn't count 5 of the major TOs for Smash 4 on my hand right now.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I just want to clarify my statement earlier about the leadership. I don't want that to be interpreted as saying that the top leaders, anybody specific, is not doing their job. Because there's plenty of good people who are really putting in work in the community. It's more a statement about just the general leadership and not anybody in particular.
Yeah, I think that will come with time, but I do want to talk about more the issue at hand, which is greater than Smash 4, greater than Melee, even greater than this Smash community, and that's the idea of top players getting buys at open tournaments. So as we all saw, it wasn't just the stream monsters going on Facebook and posting angry comments. We have SRK, Event Cubs, even Daily Dot, multiple respectable, non-specifically Smash-related communities, but also covering Smash and esports, wrote about the issue. There was multiple Reddit posts. Chibo weighed in on Smash for You, multiple Facebook posts. So this has wide outreach. And I've been reading all of them. As you said earlier, Josh, there's a lot of comments. So my phone was dying like really fast because I kept getting so many replies. So I ended up having to unsubscribe to them and check them individually later. But I just want to say that as a tournament organizer, you're never going to make everybody happy. Like, I understand that. Dr. Z understands that. We have to make decisions that are better for our event and better for the whole. And sometimes things happen and people are going to be upset that everybody's a critic. You're going to have some problems that come up. But we have to really look into the issue is like, what are people getting for these buys? And that is not just top players, not just tournament organizers, but the average players coming to the event, like spending, I think the grand total for our hotel registration and everything was pretty close to like $800 or $1,000 per person to go out there from here. So what are we getting for that? If you're giving top players such a huge advantage, what about everybody else? Because these type of tournaments at this scale is larger than any group, any TO, any top player. It's huge. And every time we do something, it changes. Like after Big House 5, many people were comparing to Big House 5, and then they were building off of it. Like the compendium was really successful, and now people are doing compendiums. So every time we have a tournament of this scale, it's used as a starting point, I would say, for anybody going forward. So tackling this issue now before it happens, I mean, it's going to happen regardless. Like, I think that everybody has the right to run their events the way they are, but we should at least have a dialogue about just the fundamental problem or the fundamental impact that this kind of thing will have on the community.
Sure. So if I can comment on the point that you brought up about who's going to benefit, who's going to be how is everybody going to be affected by this decision? So obviously whoever gets selected for the top 32 benefits from this decision. I would also argue that most of the people who so I would also say that the hidden bosses benefit from this decision. People who, for whatever reason, do not get seeded but are also really good. This reduces the chance that they run into somebody that's just going to wipe them out regardless, because a hidden boss can only do so much. They'll crack the top 64, but they're not going to crack the top 8. So it reduces the chance that they have to play somebody really deadly early on. So I think they benefit. Who stands to lose are the people who are looking for a chance to play the top players in the bracket and are just happy to have a chance to play them at all. But that's actually a very small number of people when you look at really each person of the consistent top placing players in Wii U. They really play a small number of people on their way through the bracket. So the chance that any person is going to get in the bracket and play a top player is pretty small, but not non-existent. So part of the reason for doing this was also that we wanted to schedule a 2-hour kind of friendlies line and meet and greet time with all the top players so that they could sit down and anybody that wanted to come up to them could just play them, and just, they could play 40 people in this, 40 or 50 people in this 2-hour span, as opposed to, the 3 or 4 people that they would have played on their way to, where they eventually got to with the bye. The other set of people that do not benefit from this decision are the people on that cusp of top 32, which are, 33 through 64 or whatever. Now, obviously, they don't benefit because top 32 versus 33, they have a much different looking bracket. So clearly those people don't benefit either. And we wanted to figure out, as I said before, we came to this group on a fact-finding mission, and it stands to reason that, a lot of these people, these 33 through 48 people on the cusp of that, would be in that group and be able to speak on whether this is a good idea or not, because they're the people who probably stand to lose the least in this decision. And, as I said before, we didn't get any feedback from them that was negative about it. I don't know if that means everybody is hoping that they're going to be a top seed or whatever, but nevertheless, we didn't get any feedback about that. And again, I think that the last group of people to talk about are the people who watched the tournament on stream, and we thought that overall this was a slight benefit to them because it was really enabling us to run our side events properly and yeah, and it kind of let us do the tournament that we wanted to do, because the melee crew battles at Big House 5, I think currently have the record for most viewership of a Friday or a day one event at a national, and it was the most fun I've had ever watching a day one event. And Wii U, there's a lot of scores to settle. We wanted to give them the same kind of opportunity to have this kind of thing happen for them, because it was super hype. It lets all these regional rivalries that are happening kind of come to fruition and play them out. And so that also played a part in our decision to make this happen.
What I think, what I understood from Vayseth's question wasn't necessarily, though. I think something I'm interested in as well is sort of the broader implications of this practice, though. I mean, there were a lot of tweets sent that were from non-Smash communities. I mean, Viscant, of course, popularly tweeted, but on a completely unrelated note, if any TOs want to see me in the top 32 for Marvel in 2016, I'm okay with it. There was a lot of calls saying, oh, we should go back to Evo at 2014 and give Daigo this sort of buy to get him past pools where he drowned. I'm sort of wondering, what's your perspective on the implication of this outside of Smash?
Well, yeah. I think everybody's got... I'm sorry, I talked for a while. You can go ahead first.
Oh, yeah, no, the only thing I wanted to throw in there is one of my main points that I wanted to talk about today during the interview is I think this sets a dangerous precedent going forward, especially since it will be in the new year, that if this is successful, which, I mean, from your previous points, if we're doing something so drastic and so controversial, I would like to see how much more of a benefit. And I think your post saying that after Genesis 3, if it didn't work out, that sucks. If it does, cool. I think that's the best we can do. You are trying to do an experiment, but correct. I am definitely worried about what this means over, because as far as I can tell, Genesis 3 is the first game to do this. I think Josh mentioned that tennis does this, but as far as games, nobody else has done this with an open tournament. I mean, you have invitationals where you have X players or whatever, and then public slots that people can qualify for at other tournaments or something, but never straight buys for people ranked by a small panel of however qualified they are, that it's still a small arbitrary group of people ranking these people. And
sure,
I think the main problem with Melee, you at least have Melee It On Me, and you have your staff, and then you have the Melee It On Me people, but there's decades of data. I think while we were at Big House, I was seeing some of the Melee commentators, and they were able to source and bring up documents of who's played who and when, and like what even stages they went to sometimes. Like the detail that they have over there is pretty crazy, so it's more viable. But I think a lot of people had a problem with who specifically judges who's the best, and why are we giving these players such preferential treatment, and why are they that much better than the average person? Because this event is huge. It has like how many players overall between the two games? Like how many unique entrants?
3,000. Close to 3,000.
Yeah. So we have a lot, but I think the majority of the hype, and I mean, especially for the top players, the prize money comes from these average players, and a lot of them enter into the tournament with the chance that they'll be able to either see them play live or even actually play them. So your whole thing about having a panel where pro players can go and where pro players can be at that people can go to, I think that's a really good idea and something that I'll even be looking into myself when I do something at this scale later on this year. But I think a huge problem that I've seen with multiple fighting game tournaments is we're getting more and more preferential treatment for the top players, because it's critical that we have top players going, because as spoken by one of our regionals, when Zero came, we got over 200 people, and that's on his name alone. So it does a lot for a tournament, and tournament organizers should be doing their best to coax these big players, because that's what brings in the stream numbers. That's what brings in the actual people in the door. But somebody I worked with at Big House 5 and somebody I worked with at Youmacon and the head of Combo Breaker, the Hotto on Twitter, he tweeted out saying, the big sadness here is that emerging players will miss an opportunity to get crushed by / learn from a vet. That's an important growth experience. I later talked to him privately, and he went on to say that it cannot be overstated the impact of playing a pro, someone they see on the internet in streams, videos, and articles, can be for somebody young in a competitive community. And a lot of these things just seem like, that's why I think the majority of the response of this has been negative, because it hasn't been from the top level or from the TOs, but it's been, what do the average people get for paying their entry fee? They're paying the same as everybody else, but it seems like a lot of these events keep taking more and more and more away from them. I think for critical growth in the format, or in our format that we have, because we don't have the huge sponsors and we can't have the $10 million tournaments just yet, we have to cater to the everyman at some point, and it seems like we're going against that.
So, like you said, we're cognizant of the fact that you have to get the top players there to have your tournament, and as things go on, just the fact of the economics of it is that the top players can ask for more and more in order to come to your event. And if like in League of Legends, the top teams are paid appearance fees to come to their events. We're not quite there yet in Smash, and honestly, I don't really like that system. But that's the unfortunate reality of the situation. Now, we wanted to do, I think our responsibility is to do something to not necessarily counteract that, but to offer something more to the everyman, the every player, which is what our meet and greet and friendly time was supposed to be all about. Whether people think that's enough or not, that's a completely open question. It's something that's the community is constantly evolving on. So we would like to be able to find better solutions if they're out there.
I mean, the fact remains that it is something.
Right.
There's multiple ways that we can do better.
Real quick, Genesis actually has a history of running round robin pools, and a big reason for that is exactly what you said, is that everybody in that pool will get a chance to play whoever the top player is in that pool. And that's something that we discussed bringing back all the way until maybe a month ago. We were constantly trying to find a way, just with the logistics that we have and the time that we have, to be able to do round-robin pools for everybody. And we decided this year, since this is our first time running a tournament that's even close to this big, we are going to do the safe thing and run the bracket pools. But next year, our goal is, and I don't mind saying this just right now, our 100% goal that we are going to focus on trying to meet is to be able to find a way to do round-robin pools so that everybody is going to get, even if they're the worst player in the world, they're going to get a minimum of 5 to 7 sets, depending on how big the tournament is, how big the pools are, and a chance to play that top player. We're really, it really sucks that we can't do it this year, because just of the logistics involved and us wanting to make sure that the tournament runs well and ends well for everybody. But I think that we definitely have the every player, the pop monster, whatever you want to call them, their concern in our hearts. And I hope that if it didn't come across so far and it doesn't come across this year, I hope it will in the future.
I think this is really good because when people listen to this, I really hope that they tweet at you and me and they really get the word out there about what we can do, because that's my main focus. And I have an idea of what everybody wants, but I'm not sure. And I don't think any TO is. And we can always try to do things and see if they work. But if they fail, it not only can affect us financially, but it can affect our reputation going forward. We did this failed thing. So it would be great if we could get the everyman's opinion out there and see what would you want, because at the end of the day, tournament organizers are putting on a service, almost like they're getting the size of conventions at this point. So
Yes.
You're paying for entry, you're traveling out there, you're having a hotel, and we as tournament organizers have an obligation to offer you something for your money. You're giving us money and we're giving you something. This is a transaction here. And I really want to give more people more for their money so that way they keep coming back. And even if they think, oh man, I'm terrible at this game, why am I wasting all this money? At least the experience or something we can offer brings more people. Because even if they don't enter our tournaments, like spectator only things are a huge, or spectator only badges are a huge source of tournament revenue now. So if there's something we can do, not only just for players in tournaments, but people who just want to come to the event just to be at the event, like I want to offer more services to make the events going. And I think 2016 will be a really good thing. And if we can all, as TOs, work together, and it's not just Smash, this is bigger than any single community. All the tweets and everything has gone, like this spans into the FGC. And even IGN, they did a video. They have an esports like column or video series, and they did one, I want to say a couple months back, where members of the Smash and FGC community were talking about the FGC and Smash together and how it's been and the differences, the similarities, where they see it going in the future. And you had Viscant saying in response to this, in a tweet saying, reading up on the Smash seeding drama, to paraphrase Yipes, why is it always that game? I heard weird bracket rules and I knew it was Smash. I feel like going forward, all of us as TOs, especially the FGC in here in Smash, we should go forward and we should find a new way to make these events bigger and more sustainable, because if any of these decisions affect the every player enough that they stop coming, we're not going to be able to make any more bigger and better events. And ever since Melee has gotten back into EBO, we've just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger at an alarming rate.
Yeah. So this kind of, I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to bring up a point from earlier that you had mentioned about comparison to other communities and other games and whether something like this had ever been done before. And actually, events with circuit points are not a new thing.
Correct.
At Apex 2015 for Melee, there were Road to Apex events that you could earn points at, and the people that got points were actually seated, if I recall, further in the brackets relative to its size, further in the bracket than the people seated out at Genesis will be. And in my opinion, circuit points produce a less reliable ranking of people than humans can do, that a relatively intelligent group of humans can do. Because with bracket points right now, the state of esports for FGC games is that not a lot of people have the money and time to travel to all these events down to the level of however many people you're trying to promote out of the bracket. It just doesn't work. A ranking system, a circuit system with points is only as good as the assumptions you put into it. And with something like Apex, it was not difficult to game the system by going to an event that you knew would have low turnout, or just, you were lucky to be able to go to more events than other people. And although it produced kind of reliable rankings towards the top, the bottom half of those rankings, I think any human could put together, any human that follows the scene as much as, any of the top players, or even any of the top like 200 players, could have put together a better list than that. And there was no outrage over that at all, because we have the appearance that, well, okay, these are numbers being put into a formula and it spits out consistent numbers, therefore it's somehow objective or fair. And I really disagree with that. And, maybe I have a different philosophy than everybody else, but I don't feel like that's as objective or fair, because um, for reasons, I pointed out ways that the system can be gamed, and also, every system that you create has subjective values and goals that go into creating it in the first place. So, in my opinion, the rankings that that MIOM produces, or probably even the rankings that our group of people in the Global Smash 4 discussion group will produce, those will be better than any circuit could produce down to that level. So I'm really, the fact that it's, as you said, kind of an arbitrary group of people doing rankings, that really honestly doesn't bother me that much, because it's going to be better than whatever a circuit could do, and people have accepted circuits in the past. Now, as far as what the FGC thinks, as I've said before, I have a different philosophy maybe than some of the FGC people. And, it's just based on different values. And I have my values and they have their values. And that's fine. I think one of the things about Smash that makes it so great is that we have had to come up with our own rules about this game, because our game is not made directly for competitive players. We've had to do our own experiments about what works for us, and that's led us down, the kind of this amazing history and path, where Melee has its consistent rule set because of all the experimenting we're doing. Wii U is getting there because they're doing plenty of experiments on rule sets. Like 2-stock versus 3-stock, that's still going on. Mii's and customs that are all going on. So I regard our experiment with the seeding out as far less adventurous than Evo's experiment with customs, for example. And that, again, that's a difference in philosophy, and I don't think that that this has to be looked at as kind of objectively silly because we're trying out something different than the FGC does.
Yeah, getting back on a couple of those points, in the IGN video I referenced earlier, I believe it was Mike Ross. I think what he said, the fundamental difference between our two communities is, back in the day when you wanted to play Street Fighter or Tekken, you went to the arcade and you were a kid and you only had X amount of quarters. So you were fighting for everything you had because you got to stop playing if you got beat. So I think the FGC culturally and their community really believes in the fight for literally everything you have, which is probably why so many of them were so appalled by the idea that a top player would get any preferential treatment whatsoever, because had they given their way, they wouldn't want anybody having winners round one buys if they could get away with it. They want literally everybody to fight for every single thing.
Well, you know that the Evo bracket structure actually does give buys in round 2, because the way that it works is they try to fill up as many brackets as possible. So, for example, at Evo this year, Melee had 120 pools instead of 128. So what that means is that in the round 2 brackets, there are 8 spots where there are buys. And that means that 8 people actually got buys about 4 rounds into the tournament, and then those buys came down to losers bracket and randomly gave 8 people in losers bracket buys. So, and obviously there's not a perfect solution to a lot of these things, but the fact is that they do have buys like that, and obviously we're giving a lot more, but
right, and that system didn't come without its share of criticisms as well. But I think it's to credit the Genesis team and you and the people who made those decisions. I mean, your rhetoric earlier about, and not rhetoric, I mean your honest words about wanting to make a great experience for everyone who goes rings true, especially with regard to how quickly the turnaround of this controversy was. I mean, not 24 hours after Fallen makes this post and everything starts happening, you guys seem to have buckled down and really said, is this sort of the image we want to put forth, or is this sort of the kind of experience we want to put forth? And it seems to be, and it's my perception, I think it's perception of a lot of folks, that you saw an opportunity to make it better for most folks, and you went for that opportunity.
Right, and I hope that's the perception. I mean, I feel that me in particular, I do my best really to interface with everybody as much as possible, including the Wii U people who I normally don't interact with at all. For example, we initially were like, we're not going to allow any kind of wireless stuff, no Pro controllers, no anything else. That's what Big House did, and we were content to follow the Big House model. But we thought about.
Thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Right.
I'm tired of that.
But we were like, is this possible? I mean, how much work would it be to let wireless controller players, into the tournament and to accommodate them? And we came up with a system where everybody who's doing a wireless controller has to go to a specific station to play their matches to, minimize any kind of shenanigans that are going on. We have a system for people who are using the wireless Pro controller. And, it would have been the easy decision is 15 seconds to type out no wireless controllers, period, post on Facebook. But, I feel like, and I hope this comes through again with our decision to change this, is that we're really interested in interfacing with everybody, and we do our best to try to, answer anybody who wants to talk to us.
This resonates really strongly with something Fallen said to me yesterday during an interview I had with him, in which he said this is the sort of power of Facebook and Reddit and Twitter, of course, is that these sorts of concerns can make it to a TO, where in the past, I mean, of course, now we're at a point where Twitter is years and years old, but it's so much easier as TOs, and of course I'm a TO at a lower level, but I do the same sort of thing. It's so easy to interface with the players you're trying to serve and to make sure the decisions work through. So gentlemen, I don't want to keep you guys for too much longer. I do want to give you both the chance to sort of make a couple final statements. If you have anything you'd like to say, whoever would like to go first, feel free. But
let me just say one thing real quick,
yeah,
is that keeping in line with the idea about how TOs interface with the community. One thing that I would really hope people keep in mind, and this is something that I try to practice, is that when I have people I disagree with, I never want to make it an adversarial kind of relationship with my, with my antagonist, so to speak. And the reason for that is it makes it harder for my opponent, even though I don't like to think of them in that terms. It makes it harder for them to change their minds if I come at them in an adversarial way. And I think that perhaps if I really believe that the tone of the post that Fallen made really set the tone of the discussion overall for the last 2 days. I think a lot of people wanted to bandwagon on the tone that he made in his first post and his responses to me. And I think that we could have had this discussion, we could have had this decision made earlier with a lot less, heartache and hand-wringing from everybody involved if this post was made in a more neutral, you don't have to be friendly about it, but you should take a neutral tone about it and come at it as, here's a problem, what are we going to do about it to solve it, instead of the manner that a lot of people took. There are a lot of posts on Facebook about, this is the worst decision ever, oh my God, give me my money back. And that's insane. It just really does not help anybody to take that kind of action. And I realize that you're not ever going to convince everybody to kind of take that course of action, to take that tone. But I just really hope people do in the future, because it's something that I try to practice in my personal life. I'm far from perfect at it, but it's something that I aspire to do. And I really hope that that everybody in the future tries to do the same thing, because it greases everything, it makes everybody happy, it makes things happen quickly and more painlessly for everybody.
Respect and kindness. I think we can all get behind that for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Ooh, cliches.
Yes. But it is true. I
Of course,
really
of
believe
course.
that.
Vayseth, anything left for you?
Yeah, I did want to say that in response to the Apex Road to Apex series or whatever, I also agree that that system isn't perfect, but we already talked about that. Like, it doesn't seem like anything is perfect, and I don't think that this is the answer, but just like Dr. C said on Facebook, we'll see if it works. If it doesn't, that sucks. If it does, cool. But the reason why I have such a serious problem with buys is because the only other place that I found there to have a buy system for top players is card game tournaments. Magic the Gathering, for example. If you are Magic the Gathering Pro, you start any tournament you go to, like a Grand Prix or whatever, other than the Pro Tour itself, with 3 wins. You automatically start with 3 wins. And that's mostly for the things that I mentioned earlier. It entices pros to go to your tournaments. And then pros going to your tournaments lead to more people going. And they also have appearance fees like in other games too. But starting a tournament gives such a serious at 3-0 gives such a serious advantage to them over the general populace, especially in a game like cards where variance is a huge thing. While it's not a perfect comparison, it still remains a huge controversial issue, and like not a lot of people like it. They've tried to adapt things by kind of combining the two, whereas if you're a super recognized player, you get buys. But if you're an everyman, we have these qualifying tournaments where if you place well at these qualifying tournaments leading up, which if you already have buys, it doesn't apply to you, but you can get 2 buys, or you get this many points and you get 1 buy, and they try to open it up for everybody. So this is a starting point, might lead into something more like the trading card game system that they have over there, but I still don't think that just hearing about why this was implemented, I'm not so sure that the advantages for the tournament organizer side really outweigh the advantages you're giving to these top players. But that's something we'll find out after Genesis. Like, I think
Sure.
both Josh and I are going to Genesis, right?
Yes.
Like, we're really looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I am super looking forward to it. So I'm not with the ridiculous camp of people who say, Genesis, give me back my plane ticket money for this.
Right.
Like that's uncalled for. Like, some of the things that people said weren't that out of reach. I think it's great that you reversed the Smash 4 decision, only because it's not like we have a pro point system and we don't have anything like Melee It On Me, and we don't have that years and years of raw data. And I think, me included and many other people, wanted to go to Genesis 3 because this was going to be the first time that all the Smash 4 players were going to be actually tested.
Yeah.
This is the first time we were going to have serious international talent. This is the first time we were going to have people from all the different regions in North America coming, and this was the tournament. So to then give people buys at this, where the majority of the hype was, when Zero meets this low-level player from Japan, or mid-level player, I should say, from Japan in pools, what's going to happen? And I think that was building hype in the top 32 just cutting it. So for Smash 4, I definitely agree that that's probably not. And talking about upsets in general, a lot of people referenced MVD versus Coco losing round 1 at the Big House 5. I want to let everybody know that was my fault, or our fault, I should say. Like, as you said in your pastebin, it was terrible seating. And we tried a system with seating, and it worked really well, except for that one point. There was no problem. Well, I don't want to say no problems, because like I said, you can't make anybody happy, but that should not have happened. A PR Michigan player, or I think formerly, or I actually don't even know if he's currently PR.
Formerly PR.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Playing somebody like MVD round 1 should not happen.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure everybody who's using that, especially I see in all these, every single article references that, and it just makes me hurt more and more, because
you have to know that this is your mistake
that they're using to justify you doing this. That was hype. No, it wasn't. That wasn't hype. That was a TO error that keeps coming back to me every day. So, I mean, we know that going forward, and we're going to learn from that. And I think that's what we should do with Genesis. We're going to see what happens, and we're going to go forward with it. But on the same hand, MVD versus Coco is one thing. Zero versus Seagull Joe was not one thing. Was not part of that. And that loss leading to that miraculous story that made the Big House 5 what it was, back when Zero was still undefeated and it looked like he would finally be defeated for the first time, pretty much defined our tournament there. So I think upsets are huge, and for not only viewers but like spectators at the event, it also, those stories give hope and inspiration and motivation to those lower level players. Were like, hey man, this guy beat this well-known player that no one had ever heard of. That could be me someday. And just I really don't like giving advantages to anybody, because I think that forms the narrative of your tournament. And financially or numbers wise, your tournament can be a success, but I think your tournament is ultimately a success based on the legacy it leaves behind. And that Zero story will forever be one of the reasons why people talk about the Big House 5 going forward.
Yeah.
Ever.
Where was that in the bracket, by the way?
That was to get into top 32.
Oh, okay.
That was the last, I believe.
Yeah,
because that put Zero having to face MVD to get out of loser side in top 32.
Wow.
So
okay.
So that upset. The only reason why I reference it is not because it's entirely related, because that would have happened post buys in your system. I believe.
Oh, okay. So. Yes, actually, it would have.
Yeah,
because it's.
But I just wanted to stress that upsets do happen, and like Daigo drowning in pools, for example. But I mean, we're talking Smash. Like, we can go and find every instance where some pro player drowned in pools, and it wouldn't do us any service. But the fact that is not an irrelevant piece to the overall success and legacy of a tournament. And
and we were aware that we were going to miss out on upsets by doing this. You know, it was just a question of whether this was worth it or not. And you know, like you said, part of the appeal of this tournament also is that all these people are coming there, and we want to see what happens when they meet up. And you know, I don't want to absolve myself entirely of responsibility in this, but like I said before, we came to this group which I thought was going to represent the opinion of the community purely on a fact-finding mission. And you know, I really wish some of them had expressed the concerns that you're telling me now about this, so that you know this wouldn't have happened in the first place.
I want to put personal blame on myself, because the people who know me very well. I've been in this community for over 12 years now, but I never really made it apart. I think more people know me for my King Day-to-Day chain grab thread that I made in 08 of Brawl than they do know of like what I'm actually good at doing, which is running events. So that's my fault, and it's even worse because I'm moving back to Japan in March, and I will be coming back for the Big House 6. That will happen, but I'm further again going back because of just the nature of my career. I bounce back and forth, and nobody knows who I am. So I guess this is a general call out to everybody out there saying, you know, community leaders of Smash 4, we need to build something, either like Melee It On Me, or we need to get a back room going, or we need to have more discussion about this. I know the game's only a year old, but 2016 should be the turning point for that. We should get more cohesion. And in general, I think the number one problem that I agree with is a lot of these changes and a lot of the problems that have been going on with not just Genesis, but other things. Most of the time it's TOs making decisions that were after registration happened. I remember Big House 5. Big House 5, their people did not come because of our stage list. There were many people who didn't come because of our stage list after Paragon. They were like, Paragon did it right. Big House has this janky stage. I'm not playing on these stages. Freaking Midwest rule sets.
That Midwest
whatever.
Rule sets, man. It was the same in Melee, as I'm sure you know.
So the problem with that was I, as a tournament organizer, my personal philosophy is I will never ever change after people have already spent money. Like I talked about earlier, I think TOs are offering a service.
Yeah.
And you need some sort of guarantees. I saw how well Paragon did. After Big House, we immediately changed the stage list.
Mhm.
But I couldn't change it because people had already registered with that stage list in mind.
Yeah. And
So
I think that is definitely a really important point. And we would like to hold ourselves to the same standard. The problem is that Genesis 3, we didn't even know we were going to do it until like September.
Correct.
And we've just been throwing together things throughout this whole time. This has been like an insane 3 months for all of us on the team. And you can ask anybody else that's high up in the G3 hierarchy. And it really sucks that we have to make some decisions after people have paid their way into the tournament. And my honest hope is that next year we'll be able to have all that stuff in place before registration goes up, because I 100% agree with you that it's a really bad look to change things after people have paid for it.
Well, it certainly sounds like, I mean, the work you guys have put in, the heart you've poured in, is going to come out with an amazing product, an amazing event, and so we're really grateful for you guys for pushing forward as much as you have in these short months.
Really looking forward to it.
I think that's the time we got. So
you can thank me after it goes.
Yeah. I think, Josh, before we wrap up, the last thing I want to say is out to the listeners. If anybody can take anything away from this interview, I want to stress that we've shown that your tournament organizers are willing to work with you, and we really want to hear your feedback, and we want to know going forward what we can do to better serve you guys out there. And the other thing is that the Smash 4 community really needs to step it up and there needs to be more leadership in the community. There needs to be more bridges and unity within the community, because whilst the Smash community and FGC is one thing, we still have lines between Smash 4 and Melee. And I think everyone's been saying it. We don't know if it's possible. We don't know if it's necessarily needed. But going forward, if the Melee guys, all they really need is they go, I need to talk to this guy because he's the main in that community. And I already know if I need to talk to Melee, like if I'm doing any cross promotion, I know who I can talk to in my local community. And I think we really need to do that starting going forward in 2016. So to all the listeners, first, make sure you talk to your TOs and let us know what you want out of events. And let's talk about tournaments in a more fundamental philosophy, like the philosophy of tournament organizing and rules and et cetera. And let's talk about that kind of thing, and let us know what you guys would want. Do you want a more convention? Like, do you want to go with this panel idea where on Thursday or when there's free time that we have panel time with pros? Like, is that something you would want? Something like I was talking about Magic the Gathering. Another thing that they do to appeal to the everyman is like Evo had $20,000 in the pot. At a $20,000 Magic tournament, they pay out to 250 people get money. Is spreading out the payouts to making sure that less than 1% is the people who get all the money isn't the case, and that we spread out so that way people might gain motivation that you don't want to know what, if I win one or two more matches, I place quote unquote in the money. You'll hear Magic players or trading card game players say, I'm placing, man, if I win, I got in the money. Or it's like, how'd you do? I got in the money versus I top 8'd. Those are like two ranks. So while people may never see a top 8 stage, they might go into the money. And that's something I'm really passionate about, is trying to figure out ways that we can, as tournament organizers, appeal to everybody and make the experience more enjoyable. And going forward, I hope that we open up a dialogue to do that.
Definitely. And actually, at Genesis 3, we are planning to pay out to top 32 in Melee and top 16 in Wii U.
Great. That's at least a step forward, because that says that even like those hidden bosses, they even have a chance of placing. And I hope that the phrase from trading card games, placing in the money, quote unquote, becomes a thing over here, because that means that we're paying out more and more. I don't think there's any reason to give first place $11,000 or $12,000 when with easy pay structures, you could have taken a few grand for that and paid out double or up to at least 64 or 32.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
if you just reduce each person a little bit and you just make everybody's days, and it's a way of bringing people back because they're reducing their costs. But we've already talked too much, so I don't want to say anymore. But I just wanted to definitely say that this has been about the philosophy of running a tournament and the communication between tournament organizer and spectator, streamer, player, and that we need to work on that. And this is perfect time, just in time for the new year, starting in 2016. I think that's something we all need to work on.
Sure, I like that as the two core messages for this podcast, for this conversation. You know, be respectful and express your opinions, but respectfully, and also talk to your TOs. Two really great core messages. And that's that, I think. On behalf of Down B, I want to thank both my guests, Pulse Gaming's Vayseth and Melee Economy's Dr. Z, for joining me. Certainly lots of digital ink has been spilled and will continue to be spilled about Genesis 3. But I think I speak on behalf of, I don't know, a healthy chunk of the Smash community when I say we're looking forward to Genesis. We're going to have a great time. And I'll see you both in a couple of weeks. Thank you all for
Great.
listening.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for having us on.
Of course.